Okay, it's not quite Super Bowl Sunday, but we have, the most important matchup coming this evening in which the Buffalo Bills will play the, I don't know, whoever's and hopefully win.
That was Kansas City, isn't it?
Oh,
The
that's right.
Chiefs.
That's right. The Kansas City
Yep.
Chiefs. Yes. We'll see if they win.
Did they snow all the shovel from the stadium?
That part amuses me to no end that is now a national story that, they make this call for the fans to come and shovel out the snow from the stadium. We're building a new stadium, by the way, which will also be open topped. So this will go on in the future. Okay. Sunday.
Come to the stadium, get free snow cones.
There you go. Yeah. I won't even go there. We have a bunch of stuff to talk about, and we're going to start with Tim, who has
before we do that, you never actually said what today's date is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Today is right, Sunday, January 21st. It is actually the third Sunday in January. This is one of the few months where the third Sunday is like way the heck.
2024.
2024, which means we've been doing this. Is this our fourth year or third year of doing this? I have to go back and do the math.
Meeting I remember
started in 21. So
we started in 21. Okay,
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, so this will be fourth year then. Yeah. All right. I find that a little crazy, but there it is. And as always, I look forward to these things because I look forward to seeing y'all.
So just imagine we've had meetings longer than Timex existed.
That's right. Oh my God. This is so true. Hey, Tim.
Yep.
I'm going to spotlight you. Show us what you got.
All right. If I can get it in the light just right. So there's a company called minifigs.me in the UK that takes these Lego figurines and customizes them. And this is their customized Sir Clive Sinclair. That is the scientific calculator. And let me put in his other arm, if I can do it right. Come on. Well, maybe it won't work, but there's also him and a Specky that comes with it too.
That Specky looks more like, well, I guess it looks like a Specky. It looks more like a ZX81, doesn't it?
It can't look too much like a Specky because then, so everything on the websites, I don't know about Sir Clive, but if they had something like for the IT crowd, they call it something else. They had the Grinch that stole Christmas. That was called the Christmas Thief.
The Christmas
because of trademark and copyright and so on. Plus, they're limited. I'm sure this is probably just a standard piece from Legos. You can see a little thing in the back. So they're limited to what sizes they get. I'm sure they buy these blank pieces from Legos and then custom print them. So, you can actually go on the website and design your own piece. And it comes in this little matchbox container. So, which I was kind of neat.
That's so cool. I have it on my screen. I'm going to share it.
Yeah, it rattled when I got it. I'm like, oh, it's broken, but no, it was just the one little part. So, because it came in a soft bag instead of a hard box, but it worked. It was like $25 out the door plus shipping all the way from the UK. Wow. It took about 2 weeks to get here, roughly. So
that must be a younger Clive with all that hair.
Yeah.
Unless you can pull the hair off. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe that comes off.
It does.
Oh yeah, that's detachable.
My wife did that last night and she was looking at it.
No one is spared the abuse. Yeah, a ZX Specky with, oh wow, they can't even spell it consistently from one paragraph to the next. In one paragraph it's with C's and the next it's with K's. That's really cool. I wonder who these other people are.
Those Gen Zers, man, what are you gonna do?
Exactly. Very cool, Tim. Very cool. I like it a lot. I don't know that I need one, but I like it.
By the way, I think they did that on purpose to spell it wrong to get around the copyright, perhaps.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. It does look in the picture on the web. It does look more like a specky with a little rainbow. Cool.
Yeah, it's so small, it's really kind of hard to see.
Well, yeah. Hence the minifigs. They put the mini in figs. Carl, you've been a little busy. Do you have time for a life, or are you just
I'll tell you. Well, I'd had vacation for like a week, so that's probably why I got so busy.
So tell us what you've been up to.
Well, I know we kind of talked about the software conversion thing. I know we were talking about that last meeting at the end there. Well, I
Yeah.
think during the meeting. So that's kind of one thing I guess we can touch on. Like I said, that's not really something that exists right now, because we're still working. Well, Ryan's the coder on that. I can't take any credit for anything there. I'm just the idiot that came up with the idea. But it's something, I've kind of always in the back of my mind, even back in, in the 80s. Like I said, when I scanned in that stuff and put it on the site, some of that stuff was John Brown's handwritten, notes that he went in and found the ROM calls right between the Spectrum and the 2068. And this was, I think, when the heck did anyway, like 93 or 83, I think. So
Yeah.
you can kind of, that's what we were kind of thinking, I think, back then. I mean, I can't remember for sure. It's been too long, but I mean, why else would you come up with a I don't know, 5-6 pages worth of ROM calls if you weren't going to convert software? But of course,
Right.
back then that was more of a, I don't know, maybe if you were a big company, you could have some kind of tools that you could make it more automated, right? But anything that you kind of did probably back then was going to be more hand done.
Yeah.
So here we are. As I was just thinking, well, here we are 40 years later. I'm sure we've got better tools now to more automate this, right? As long as we give it the right information, we get all the ROM calls that we think are pertinent to any kind of software that would be, machine code software anyway. I'm sure, basic software wouldn't matter. It would
Right.
run on either, unless you're using some of the 2068 commands, which wouldn't make any sense because we're going from Spectrum to 2068, not the other way
The other
around.
way around. Yeah.
So, and I was talking with Ryan about it, and he was saying, if we have a table of ROM calls, we can import, just basically, I guess the end goal is to be able to put a TAP file or a TZX file into this program, and it will, basically open it up and disassemble it and look for all the ROM calls that it knows, right? I mean, and then if it finds a ROM call that it knows, it will automatically convert it to the 2068's ROM call, right? And in the end result, you would have a file at the end that you should be able to load on a 2068 in it, and it should run. That's the part that, the growing pains in the beginning, right? We're going to have a log that shows everything that it changed. So if it doesn't work or something, we can go back and look and see, okay, well, what ROM call did it call and why? But there's also relative, sometimes you don't call the ROM call right at the entrance, right? Sometimes you may call it, a couple instructions in for whatever reason. So we have to kind of build in that fudge factor, right? And just kind of say, well, yeah, they're not calling the ROM call directly. They're just using it to, maybe they're preloading the registers and they don't need to do something at the beginning of that ROM call, things
Right.
like that. So we're kind of giving it some leeway as far as to where it's jumping into the ROM calls. But I think again in the log it would kind of tell you that, say, hey, this is what the ROM call is, but it jumped into it, 6 bytes ahead. Or I don't really see it jumping in 6 bytes behind, because then it would be probably a different routine. But
Yeah. Let me ask you, and maybe Ryan. So I mean, knowing the addresses is one thing, right? And you can't just search for all of the 2 bytes that add up to, a given address, or even, well, I guess the addresses aren't, it seems like it would always have to be the 2-byte address. Anyway, you can't just search for those 2 bytes, because there's plenty of valid combinations of those 2 bytes that are not that address. So I'm guessing that you'll be searching for, like, jump instructions to that address, or maybe
jumps and calls,
and loading the registers, like maybe the what are the there's like a, you can use some of the registers to do jumps, I think. So I mean, it sounds kind of complicated, right?
It could be, yeah. I don't think a lot of programs probably would do that, but I mean, still, that would probably be a learning thing. So if something, we tried, and we can't test all software to the extent that, we can say it's 100% works, right? That's kind of, we just kind of want to give the tool, or make the tool available at some point, and then people can do this on their own. And then say, hey, I tried this program and it didn't work, and here's where it, it loaded and it got so far into the program and then it crashed, and this is where it crashed. But the idea is once we can get a better database, right, a better, kind of like AI. It's not really AI. We're kind of doing the AI, but we're learning as we go, and we're applying those learnings into the tool so that it would know next time, right, to what it's dealing with. And I know there's another.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna briefly mention there's a program that I found called School It.
I was going to ask you about that.
And I haven't. I've downloaded it. I haven't actually played with it yet, but it's apparently a program that you can put as mainly for Spectrum games, and it will kind of disassemble it, and you can build can't remember what file, a School It file basically is what they call it. But it kind of looks at the machine code and it tries to separate data from actual machine code, right? Because I mean, you're going to have a lot of data in your code that's not actual code, right? It's just data for the program or whatever. And I guess it kind of builds this school file so that it can, separate the actual machine code from the data, and then it can disassemble it, and you can change things and reassemble it. It's all HTML based, I guess. But I was looking at that program too, and I think that might help in this case, at least for us to understand maybe what some programs, how they're built.
Yeah.
Right. So to separate the code from the data so that we can kind of, maybe integrate that school file into our tool so that we know, hey, this is data, so don't even worry about it.
Hey,
yeah, because otherwise I was gonna have to build a code coverage map, like basically starting at the entry points that you can find in the basic code, and then following those threads to figure out what code gets executed, to have an idea of what code is data.
Carl Adam has a question.
Oh, does he?
Yes.
He always does.
Yeah. Well, I did want to say, I thought this program was going to be a bit differently. And Carl and Ryan were chatting with me yesterday, and I didn't understand. I mean, I thought I understood what they're chatting about. Even today, I wouldn't have thought this if I hadn't been told directly. So I thought the idea was this program was going to be semi-automatic. So Carl, wants this program you give it a tap file that's for the Spectrum, and then at the end you have, a program that runs without a Spectrum ROM on the 2068, which is what he wants. But I thought like there'd be in between, like Adam wants to use this program, so he uses this program that they make, and then at the end I would look at what I have to change in it, and then make some changes by hand. Their idea is a little bit different than that. Their idea is you take the file, you press a magic button, and that spits a file that will just work automatically without anything being done by the user, and it will just work. which I told them, I'm like, is that possible? It seems like it'd be very difficult to do. And that's what they both said. Yes, it'll be very difficult to do, but probably it's possible. Am I got that right, Carl?
Yeah, I think so. And I mentioned last time, like low hanging fruit, right? And basically, I think there's some easier programs, right? That, or very popular programs, obviously, that we could start with and, see how that works out. Because, I mean, you don't want to start with an obscure title that nobody ever really would want to run anyway, right? But Manic Miner or, whatever other, very popular title, that we could convert. And the other thing I was mentioning to Ryan is, Timex kind of did some of that work already, right, on some of the programs that they converted to run on the 2068 that were Spectrum programs, right, from the get-go. So they were already kind of doing that thing, back in their day. And obviously, with all the changes they made to the 2068, they knew they just totally shattered any kind of software compatibility. So, well, unless it's basic, or I guess, Tim was mentioning, I guess the guy at Scion, I believe it was, most of the stuff that they made, I think, they don't use ROM calls. I think you were saying, Tim, right?
That's what he said. Yes. I also
Yeah.
want to jump in and say that as an interim measure, if we can get a hold of games or software that has source code in assembly, that's probably that's a good starting point. And a good example of that would be the crap games competition for Sinclair's with a lot of specky games, and some of them might be in assembly. And so I think some of them might come with a source code. So we got to use that as a starting point to educate ourselves on the, instead of going straight from a tap to whatever, disassemble, we got something that's already disassembled. So there's lots of those out and available. Again, that's
Okay.
and there's but you probably have heard before the Spectrum Craps game competition.
No,
They're not great
that's a
games,
new
but
one.
at least they got source code.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Well,
they've been doing it now for 20 years.
okay. Well, the other thing is I was kind of looking at Anti-Attack because I thought in my mind that I thought Timex converted that to 2068, and apparently that never happened.
No, they were just enjoying playing it.
Yeah, and I was like, well, how are they playing it on the 2068 if they didn't convert it? Anyway, whatever. But there's a Schoolit file for Anti-Attack, right? Somebody's actually already run that through Schoolit, and so I mean that's kind of how I found Schoolit, because I was looking at the history of Anti-Attack. There's a pretty good couple websites on that, which I'm not really gonna get into that here, but I don't know if anybody here played Anti-Attack. It's a pretty fun game. You rescue the girl and try not to get bit by all these huge ants that are running around. But that's kind of one of the games I kind of think would be worthy to convert. But then there's, I think, the Horus games, right? Horus Goes Skiing, Horus something.
Yeah, multiple Horus games. Yeah.
Right. And those have been converted. Now, were they working on the 2068 from the get-go, right? That's another thing that I think Ryan kind of found out. He went to go try something on the 2068 at the Spectrum game, but it just worked on the 2068.
Guys,
Yeah, I think it was which one it was now. I think Crazy Bugs was one of them. It just seemed to work.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
João here. I was trying to step in because of what Carl says. I'm not getting feedback, so I don't know if you can hear me or not. You can.
Yeah,
Yes.
Can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, so just a very quick note because of what you said, Carl. Guys, watch out any attempt of doing anything with Horus games. Be very, very, very careful. There has been lots and lots and lots of problems in the UK because of the people that supposedly own the IP of the game. So even some YouTuber just showing the main character of the game raise strikes and lots of problems. So whatever you do, don't do it in any, let's say, public way. Just do it for the fun of porting it to the 2068. Just be careful because it's really a nasty context. At least 1 or 2 years ago, there were several problems with that. So that's something which is no crossing line for anything I'm normally joining. So I just wanted to say this. That was it. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a good point, because there's obviously copyright things, and not that we're making any money off of this. That's not the intention, right? It's just to convert. My idea was to convert it so that at least folks out there that don't have a twister board, or they don't have a back bit, or they don't have something that they can, or even a Pico, right, that they can shove a Spectrum ROM into the 2068 and run it that way. Because that's kind of where Adam was coming from. It's like, why don't you just put a Spectrum ROM in there? I mean, it's easier. You don't have to convert it. And it's like, well, not everybody has those tools. My idea is to actually just run it straight on the 2068 hardware, just from like Timex would have produced the game, right? Luckily for Horus, they've kind of already converted most of those. Those already have a 2068 version, so that was just just an example of something that we could look at to see the Spectrum version as opposed to the 2068 version. What was changed, right? How did Timex change it to make it work under the 2068? Obviously, it's more the ROM calls, I think, than anything else. Because like I said, BASIC shouldn't really matter. If it was written in BASIC, it's going to run on either machine no matter what. There's really no conversion needed there.
Unless they make ROM calls from subroutines.
Well, yeah, but that's true, I guess. But generally, if it's a BASIC program, there's no machine code or calling into the ROM or anything like that. So anyway, that's kind of a nutshell of that project, right? Of course, it's just in the early stages, and I've still got to finish up the ROM call thing. There was a good article in Syntax newsletter that they kind of went through and had like 5 or 6 pages of ROM calls that they came up with. So I'm converting those into a document so I can give to Ryan, and that'll kind of be our basis for our ROM call Bible.
So a Rosetta Stone.
Kind of, right, exactly.
A Rosetta paper.
Right.
Yeah, so I'll just say, Carl, Adam does have the point, of course. And so to some degree, it seems like it's not necessary for a lot of reasons. But hey, we do stuff for technical challenges as well. So I think that for me, at least, that kind of maybe is more, or at least for now, the interesting part that's going to keep me working on it. And you could look at it that maybe it's finishing some of the work that maybe that they were going to do anyway. But I mean, after all, why didn't Timex just put a Spectrum ROM in there and say, hey, if you ever get a Spectrum game, just throw this switch? I mean, they could have done that too, I suppose.
Well, it's kind of like the Portuguese system where they gave you the cartridge, the Spectrum emulator cartridge, right?
Yeah, but to your point, Ryan, the challenge in the learning process is, for me, that's a lot of the interesting part of doing some of this stuff.
Yeah, I think we'll learn a lot, if nothing else. And
kind of going further down the road with this is like I kind of mentioned it last time too, is let's say joystick support. A lot of Spectrum games have joystick support, right built in. But most of them are using the Kempston port. So Kempston port is port 31. And I was thinking, well, we could probably, and again, this is going into the hardware of the 2068, unfortunately, but we could put a little circuit in there that would decode address 31. So you could go in and out, you could read it and write to, well, I don't think you necessarily write to it, but you need to read it, and we can wire it into the existing pins that go to the joystick ports on the 2068. That way, like Gustavo was mentioning, when you read it through the sound chip, it's not just a simple in and out. You have to do some, you have to set the registers up right. Hey, I want to read from the IO port. What IO port do I want? Things like that. So it's not something that a game, you'd have to change the code of the game to be able to read the joystick ports the way Timex has them already in the 2068. But if you have this circuit that reads port 31 from the same, you're not disabling the joystick ports from the from the sound chip. You're just kind of in parallel with it, right? So the joystick port could read them, but also this circuit can read them as well, right?
To your point, Carl, I was doing some digging through a box of parts and stumbled across this cartridge that I'm pretty sure is a Kempston joystick port cartridge, because it's literally it's a cartridge that goes in the cartridge slot. It's got 2 chips on it and a joystick port. And if I recall, one of those chips is a like a 74 LS138, which would be involved in selecting the IO address. So, yeah, and a lot of folks did play, Spectrum games directly on their 2068, back in the 80s. I don't know if the challenge with this particular cart is that you could not also have a Spectrum cartridge installed. So I'm not sure. I guess if you had a twister board with a Spectrum ROM and there was at least one company that made those, it would have worked. But yeah, it was
yeah. So
the
thing is, if you put the circuit in, or maybe you could actually plug into the back, it could be another one of those, but it would allow you, well, if you plug it into the back, you can't use, you'd have to use the joystick ports on that board itself.
Yeah, it would be easier at that point just to make a Kempston interface, right?
Exactly.
And then you just move your joysticks to those ports, basically.
Right. So basically that was kind of another thing, because that way we don't have to convert the software the way it reads the joystick ports, right? It would just go to port 31. We have that decoded. It goes to the joysticks. And then so you could use joysticks. Well, my idea was to use the 2068 joystick ports, right, for the Kempston as well.
Right. I think what you were saying was that a request to that port for Kempston would trigger something that was been looking at the Timex ones.
So like a map.
Yeah, I was thinking more it would be wired in parallel with those, because I know some people, there was some conversation about an RS232 port done through the sound chip IO, right? And that's certainly possible. Obviously, I mean, there's a schematic and everything for it. The thing is, on the Timex, there's diodes, right? There's isolating diodes that are on all the lines. So I don't know how that would necessarily affect that, but because Timex does it, they don't do it in an unusual way, but a lot of joysticks, they usually ground, right, whatever switch you're pushing to up. When you hit up, it grounds that switch, right? But the way the Timex reads it, the ground that it's getting comes from those 2 address lines, A8 and A9, right? They go through the transistors. That's how you're using one IO port on the 2068 going into the sound chip, right? It's only one IO port, but they use A8 to select the left joystick, and they use A9 to select the right joystick.
Okay.
So it just A8 goes right straight into a transistor, right? And it grounds, when A8's high, I guess it grounds that line for the, so that ground is normally supposed to be tied to ground, right? Not through a transistor where you can switch a ground. But that's how Timex did it, just so that they can, they don't want ground there, I guess, all the time, even if you're, not trying to read from the port. But, that's all these little things floating around in my head. It's just, that's just one project, right? I mean, you're right, David. I try to post on all these projects because I think, they're going to be of interest to not everybody, but, some of us would be interested in it. I know Yao kind of chimed in a few times. I think probably another thing we should talk about is the 1000 to 1500 conversion.
So
project.
Before we do that, though, Adam has another question, because Adam has questions.
Yeah. Thank you, David. Thank you for what you're talking about here, Carl. One of the things we did yesterday. So I think I already said this, but Carl and Ryan were over yesterday for a few hours, and brought along his 26.
And he still has questions.
Well, of course, yeah, but this is, I think it's important. What the hell do I know? So he brought along the spectrum that he's working on to convert to NTSC, and it's made some progress. And he wanted to test that it could actually load software from tape. So we loaded from a TAP file, and it worked. And we loaded a program called Cybernoid, and there's nothing new here. Anyone who's like ever loaded Spectrum software on the 2068 using the ROM, it's the wrong speed. And whenever you hear music, it's usually way wrong because it's supposed to be playing at one speed. And yesterday, the game when we were playing it, like it sounded absolutely awful. And so we were like, it's not supposed to sound like this, right? So we went online and we watched someone playing on a real Spectrum, or not on a real Spectrum, on a ZX Spectrum, and the music sounded similar but correct. So that's one thing that's going to be difficult, and there's no automatic way to fix that or anything. And in some ways, it makes playing, for me, and using software that was written for the Speccy difficult because it sounds so wrong. And the game we were playing looked okay. Like it has pretty advanced graphics and it has things that look like sprites and all these things moving at the same time. And that worked okay. And that doesn't always work okay. But my other question to bring all this together is, Ryan, when you're working on this program, since you're going to be automatically going through all of this, is there a way you can spit out like a file that will give us some, something we can recompile and change if we decided to try to fix the sound or decided to try to fix things that weren't right because they were running at the wrong speed? I'm not saying we would want to do that every time, but like, can we get some assembly code spit out? Because it's going to be doing that anyway, right?
Well,
Adam?
Yes.
it's not necessarily going to be disassembling per se, but it probably would be better just to use a regular disassembler, or certainly something that had, those files that teach it about the ROM calls.
Well, I think
Adam?
what Ryan is kind of alluding to is maybe we could change the code instead of, because it's faster, right? We obviously heard that. The music and stuff didn't sound bad to me, but it was faster. It was higher pitched, right, from the original. So, I mean, if, maybe this software that we come up with at some point can say, well, we can maybe compensate for that, right? We can change.
You could adjust the values going to the beep routine.
Well,
right.
Yeah,
exactly.
we need to look at how they make the sound, how they make the notes, because if they're doing that through, raw toggling the speaker, like say an Apple II sound would be, then you got to change their machine code timing loops. But if they're making a call that says produce this note, and you should get that note, but the difference is that the routine that produces the note is running too fast, we could just go change that ROM routine or something like that to say, oh, you need, in other words, if they're all calling a ROM routine that's got bad timing, we're not going to fix the game sound. You see what I'm saying?
Adam?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Gustavo.
Hi, hello. I have a question. You convert the television system in a spectrum from PAL to NTSC?
Oh, that's a really good question because we actually messed around with that yesterday. So we were displaying the PAL mode because it's like a hybrid right now. It's running NTSC, sort of PAL, sort of NTSC. It's not totally finished. So we were running on my television, which is NTSC, it was kind of PAL. And so we were getting the screen like
rolling.
Rolling,
yes.
Thank you. And there's no vertical hold. And
yes,
but,
the rolling is regarding the 60 and 50 hertz.
Sure.
That's why.
And so I have this second monitor that was recommended by David that has all these extra features. And so that one didn't roll, but then the colors were black and white. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
Yes, it's because your monitor is support tracking with 60 hertz in NTSC or 50 hertz in PAL, but
Right.
it's not the PAL-B. Maybe that is the system of the television that the normal spectrum has, PAL-B.
But
maybe you have a different PAL system.
Yeah, so Adam is right in one sense. When I brought this, this is Ryan's Spectrum that he got from the Miller collection, right? And we're getting off topic of the other thing, but this spectrum came from Bill, but apparently it says on the bottom it was owned by A&J Microdrive, I think, at some point, because this was already converted. At least the crystals were changed over to, you know, NTSC, color burst, and 14 point. It's an odd crystal that
112.
they put in there. Actually, it's 14.381 or something like
Oh.
that. It's higher,
Oh.
which was kind of surprising to me. But I'm like, well, maybe they couldn't get a 14.112 back then, or whenever they
Yes, but
converted this.
one of the shifter is the crystal, but the another is the divider inside the ULA. It's not just
Right.
only replace the crystal.
Carl, didn't you say
So
that
this
has
is the
a-
difference, right? This is the difference. So I found, you know, there is NTSC ULAs, right, that they made. And I found, well, I've seen them before, but I just never really had an application to buy one because they're not exactly the cheapest things to get, right? These things were 75 pounds basically in Europe. It's mutant caliber. So basically it's $100 a chip, right? And
The shifter regarding the clock, the crystal clock, is 8 cycles per 1,000 hertz of clock, of hertz, depend. Is minimum the offset regarding the clock for the CPU. But the main problem is the 50 and 60 hertz. That is the main problem. And you need to change the ULA because the divider of the line, the line clock generation is different internally.
Right,
correct.
But that's what Carl did.
Yeah, we
Carl
bought
did change the ULA.
we bought the NTSC ULAs. And I guess apparently they only really sold these in Chile, right?
So Chile, Peru, and different countries in America, they has NTSC. Yes, correct.
Right. So these ULAs are the 6C011s. Okay. I know they made a 5C series, the 5C114, I think, in the series, you know, the issue 1 and 2 boards. But you know, like I said, these things were expensive. And Ryan was kind of mentioning, you know, maybe we should get a few of them, you know, just because, you know, we're doing his spectrum with this NTSC conversion. I also, obviously another project of mine is going to be the, you know, the Timex Sinclair 2000 prototype unit, which will have to be NTSC as well. So that's going to have the same conversion done to it. And, you know, and then we have a third one, right, which right now is uncommitted.
It's more easy if you convert or change the internal counter of the ULA and also create the NTSC 50 hertz of the interrupt cycle. You don't need to modify the video cycle. In this case, during the 80s, you have a tracking between the monitor signal video generation and the interrupt of the CPU. But now with the LCD displays, you don't need to track one-to-one. It's not necessary to do that.
Well, what I have found is even though the clock crystals are changed, the system still puts out PAL, right? It still shows as PAL. If you know, hook it up to a TV, even though it's got the NTSC color burst crystal, at least on my TV that I have, it doesn't do PAL, but I wasn't getting the rolling. It actually, you know, would lock sync on it, but the colors are just way out, right? The colors are totally different. They're not the right colors.
Yes, you solve this with the converter for PAL to NTSC.
Right. I mean, you could do that, but you know, our solution was is just get the NTSC PALs. Right. And I know Chris, I can't remember his last name, but he wrote the SCLD book or the ULA book, right, where they went through and figured out how Chris Smith, right. So, and he was on some forums I was looking, and he was wanting some people to run some tests on this NTSC ULA so he could figure out what did they change inside. Right. And he figured out that looks like it's a real simple change. They had to change a counter like you're talking about, Gustavo. They had to change the frame counter in there so it would reset, I think, faster, right, to create the 60 hertz instead of, you know, counting a little bit further and slowing it down to create the 50 hertz. But, you know, unlike, unfortunately, the ZX81's ULA, which has a 50-60 hertz jumper, but there's no color there, right? It's just black and white. But there's still a 5060 hertz jumper on the ZX81, TS1000 ULA, and there is a 5060 hertz on the TC2068 SCLD, right? And that's another thing I kind of want to talk about later with Yao, since he's, they just had their SCLD presentation, right? But that SCLD that they reverse engineered is for the Timex computer 2068, right? Now, I said there's a 5060 hertz jumper. I can't remember the guy that did the work, Andrew or I can't remember his name, but
our guy, Alvaro.
Yeah, your guy, Al. Okay.
Alvaro.
Now, how much of the SCLD did they reverse engineer? Did he reverse engineer 100%? So even his has a 5060 hertz jumper?
Yes, it should be.
Okay.
But only for the Timex computers, like you said. So we haven't tried. We don't know how different it is from the US computers. We do know that when we talk to the Timex engineers over here and we ask for documentation and things like that, eventually what they give to us is documentation from the USA SCLD. So that means they shouldn't have changed many things, but they did something. We don't know. I don't know for sure, and I don't think Albert knows, because I doubt he ever played with an SCLD from a Timex Sinclair 2068.
Okay.
It would be very nice to find out that.
Okay, because the main thing that we were talking about kind of yesterday during our little day-long meeting was the fact that you show the picture on your presentation, so it's it's basically a CPLD or a FPGA, whatever, on a carrier board, right? So it would be easy enough in my mind to redesign the carrier board to match the pin out of the US 2068, but there's pins that don't exist, right? The PAL 2068 SCLD does not have RGB out, right? Whereas the Timex one here does. We have an RGB out on it. So I mean, we don't have a 5060 hertz pin either, right, on ours.
Right.
But I mean, the majority of the SCLD's got to be pretty much the same, right? Other than they forgoed or didn't do the RGB out, and maybe they use those pins for something else, right? That's kind of what I'm thinking. But I mean, the circuitry is probably still in there, right, to pull RGB out of it, but it's just not done on the Portuguese version because they didn't want to do that. But I mean, I think Portugal, for the most part, was working off the American one, because they convert, they just took what we did here and made it work for what you guys needed it to do. So I think the SLD is probably more or less the same internally, more, like I said, more or less, but it's just they added a couple things for you guys, 5060 hertz, and I think that also probably changes maybe the color, the way it processes the color, so it gives us NTSC color in 60 hertz and it gives you PAL color in 50 hertz, right? But of course you have to have the right crystals. That's a given, but I think that circuitry is already there. So kind of getting back to the Spectrum has none of that, right? There's no 5060 hertz pin on the ULA for the Spectrum. So you have to actually get a different ULA, right? A ULA that is fundamentally a little bit different inside, right? Which is what we got. And I don't know that you can find any more. I haven't seen, Mutant Caterpillar had 3 of them. I got the last 3 that they had.
I was going to ask if you bought them from them, because they're the only supplier I remembered. So I haven't seen any, to be very honest.
So luckily we got, they didn't sell out of them before we came up with, we wanted to do this. Cause like I said, I've seen them before, but I was like, why do I want to have an NTSC Spectrum? But now things have changed. So,
hey, Carl,
yeah.
Can you give us a quick recap on your other 2 projects?
Okay, which ones are those? We're probably talking about the
the
TS1000 to 1500 conversion.
Yep.
And I know Yao's probably interested in that. So I'm sure everybody's seen the pictures, right?
That's the thing, Carl, is that there's a lot more people who watch this than who are on the groups.
Oh, okay.
the mail list. So it's worth.
Okay.
I'll put up a picture of your spray paint job.
Yeah. So anyway, you know, because I know that Jao was mentioning that because somebody said something about I can't remember exactly what it was, but Jao was basically saying it would be cool to have a 1500 circuitry, right, on a circuit board that actually would mount into the 1000's case, right? I think that was the gist of what
the reason for that was because me and David found out while going through the documentation of the that we got from Timex Portugal. There was a schematic that basically said old revision on TS 1000 case, something like that. So basically it told us that it seems that there was an attempt or an intention to do the first version of the 1500 within a TS 1000 case. So I think that's the motivation. I was not aware that you were trying to do it, Carl. I think it's a very nice endeavor. So I'm curious about what we can do. The only thing I comment, and that's something I imagine was not so clear for everyone, at least to me and David when we start talking, it was not, was the fact that there are some 1500s with Ferranti
ULAs, yeah.
And those have the channel 2, channel 3 VHF selector. So it brings you a question: which one should you follow, the one with the Ferranti ULA or the other ones that don't require that? But that was just food for thought.
Right.
I'm very curious about what you're doing. If you need any information from the case that we have here, well, we can try to provide, of course.
Cool. Yeah. So basically, yeah, that was kind of brought up in the group Sky conversation, was the channel. You know, I brought up the channel 2-3 switch down on the bottom. So that's still there because in the Ferranti version, right, that circuitry wasn't ever implemented. Right. That was only in the 1500s SCLD. And there's no ROM code, right, that's associated with that. In case anybody's like, well, is there some kind of ROM code that helps you switch the channel? No, there's absolutely no ROM changes that are related to that feature. The only ROM change really that they did was obviously to make the cartridge, if you had a 1510, it would look for the cartridge and it would auto start the cartridge, as opposed to the way it's going to work. Well, let me put it this way. If I still just use a 1000 ROM, I would still have to do the user call to start the cartridge. Right. But like I said, and let me get the name right. It's Andy. Andy, I guess, has got a bunch of 1500s that he's playing around with, right? And so he sent me 2 1500 ROMs, right? The factory original ROMs. So I'm going to use those ROMs in the 1000 board, right? So we can get the auto start feature, right? That's because we're going to have 16K in there. That's just obvious. It's going to be, you know, everybody converts their 1000s to 16K internal now anyway, right? So that's part of the conversion. You know, there's also the composite mod and, you know, the other things that would normally go into a, you know, modernizing a Timex 1000. But it's going to be running the 1500 ROM. It'll be in the silver/gray case. It'll have the TS 1000 keyboard because, you know, the ZX81 has the rub out and the new line as opposed to delete and enter. And Stuart, you know, when Stuart sent us last year, not a bunch of stuff, and he sent some keyboards to me, and he didn't even know that he had some 1000 keyboards. He didn't have too many of them, but you know, Stuart's got a big pile of 1000 stuff because that's kind of what he specialized in, and so he sent me one TS 1000 membrane keyboard. And I think he sent me like 2 or 3 ZX81s. But anyway, so I have a brand new keyboard I'm going to put on it. Well, yeah, it's 40 years old, but it's new. It's never, you know, the adhesive thing hasn't been peeled from the back. We'll have to see how good the adhesive is after 40 years. But, and so that's kind of where that project is, the case has been painted, although it looks like it need to do some touch up because bringing it over to Adam's place looks like we've got some little scuffs on it. But it was, I cleared it too. I clear coated it too. I learned from the printer. You have to clear the silver paint, otherwise it starts coming off on your fingers, and yeah, that doesn't work too well. It's got to be, you got to shoot clear on it, and I did, but still, it's getting some Mars and stuff. So maybe I'll need to have like 2 coats of clear or something on there instead of just the one.
Adam has a question for you.
Again?
Again, I know.
Hey,
I
I'm trying to
thought-
be
I
polite,
thought-
you know.
No, I thought his hand was up from before, but no,
No,
that's
no, I've been
fine.
on
Oh, that's new. That's
Yeah, I
new.
just have many, many questions.
He's got all kinds of hands.
So
Well,
one
that's
of
good.
the
Questions are good.
so one of the things we'd mentioned yesterday and talked about, which hasn't been brought up here, is the 1500. When you put in a 16K RAM expansion in the back, automatically somehow magically sees 32K.
Yep.
And this is not going to be supported by this, not quite a prototype,
Right.
but wants to be a prototype function that you're making. Is there any way
Right.
that can be added?
That's a feature of the SCLD in the 1500. So
no.
Joao mentioned that some of the early 1500s had a Ferranti ULA, and then at some point, the Timex Middlebury folks designed a SCLD for the 1500, and that's actually, there's a whole bunch of really interesting documentation about that in the
David, are you saying that they were shipped that way, or that was just in the design evolution?
no, that was a design feature. There's a whole bunch of documentation about that in the videos that.
No, I mean the change from the Ferranti to the SCLD, was that, are you saying some shipped with the Ferranti, or they just?
No.
I don't know, Joao,
Okay.
did they? I don't think they shipped.
I think they shipped them. It's not like let me think. I'm trying to remember where did they came from. Well, we can do some double checking. We can see if they have serial numbers and things like that, which would give us a clue if they were sold or not. I could go back and try to understand if any that I bought was like that or not, because now I'm not sure if all of them came from Timex executives in Portugal or not, but
Right.
I would expect them to have been shipped with it.
Well, but
What
think
I'm
about
not so sure. Yeah,
what
I'm
I was
not
thinking
so
about the
sure.
timeline though, and especially with the FCC certification.
Yeah, but remember one thing, and that's, well, and please don't misinterpret me, but there were 1500 sold here.
Oh,
Not many, but there were. Now, imagine, and I don't have any proof of what I'm saying, I'm just thinking out loud. Imagine they start selling them before here. I doubt that, but imagine that happen. Perhaps they release some of them with that ULA because the SCLD didn't exist. I'm not sure. I think everyone was focusing USA, so I don't think it's very feasible. But
Sounds like something that we could look into, but to me, I guess the very least, because of that, it sounds like the SCLD was never would never have been an option for the 1000 cased version of it, I would think.
yeah, probably.
oh yeah, no,
Right.
no.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
that board, that's kind of what Joe was saying,
Oh.
was he would like to have a 1500 board with the SCLD, but in a 1000 form factor, right? So somebody would have to throw, the whole 1500 schematic into Eagle or into KCAD, or, and actually have it, put route, put where your components are going to be on the board, get your board layout correct, get where the holes are, and then let the thing auto route. Right. So you could create a board that would fit into the 1000 that would have the SCLD. But the thing is, you'd have to, take the SCLD off of an existing board, right, and put it into this one.
Well, I feel
But
like you showed me at one point the either the actual circuit board in that silver, 1000/1500. I think you
Yes.
either showed me the inside or
It's a regular. We tried everything already. It's
so it's a regular 1000 in there.
Yes, it is.
So
It
then
is.
maybe it was a drawing of a
We have a schematic
Do you?
with the end written note. I don't have it here now with me,
Yeah.
but with the end written note saying old PCB TS1000 size. A schematic that says it's for the 1500,
Okay.
but with it, guys, I was just going to remember everyone one thing. I don't know if it helps or not. There's a couple of things that I remember hearing from the guys from Timex that they were, let's say, a pain in the ass. One was the power circuitry of the ZX Spectrum, so the famous TR4, TR5. Everyone complained about it. The other thing was the problem with the RAM packs. So they had lots and lots and lots of problems with the RAM packs. So the 16K expansion, I think they refer to it. Yes, precisely. That was the word I was going to say. So they refer to that. Another thing, I don't know if everyone knows. So inside the RAM pack, you have basically two PCBs connected through some kind of flat cable.
Yeah.
And they also explored doing a one PCB version. I have a RAM pack in the museum with a sticker saying one PCB or something like that. So, and what is it? What is it inside of it? It's basically a ZX81 RAM pack inside of it. Paul is showing something.
Oh, wait, hang on.
Is he raising his hand?
They
Hang
were
on.
released in the wild, the single board RAM packs.
Show us again, Paul, because you weren't
They did
pinned.
release into the wild for the commercial market the single board RAM pack. So that was a Model 3. There
Okay.
was a 1, a 2, and the 3 was the single board.
Interesting.
Okay. And yeah, and the one we have is basically a ZX81 RAM pack, and that's it. So I was just remembering everyone that probably, so the first and foremost thing, the first thing they wanted to do with the TS1500 was to put 16K of RAM there to avoid the wobble and all of that. Then we do know that the looks of the computer, the keyboard and all of that was not something that was there in day one. It's something that during the process and by looking at the ZX Spectrum, they got inspired and they introduced in the system. So I would imagine it would be very normal for the Ferranti ULA versions of the 1500 to be the first attempt. If they were formally commercialized or not, I'm not sure now. We can try to find out more, but that's what I
yeah, and it's a good point to bring up that there's some timeline there, and I know Ryan loves this kind of stuff, but I had no idea that Timex was actually looking at making a 1500 in a 1000 case, until I saw that silver case, when in your picture there. It's like, what the heck is that? anyway, so that's where I learned, okay, well, Timex was looking at doing a 1500 in a 1000 case. But like I said, draw back a little bit and say, well, what else was going on at that time? So the 2000, right, the TS2000 was shown, Consumer Electronics Show, whatever, and we were discussing this yesterday. It's like, it may have even passed FCC regulations. Let's just say it did. But I think Timex was of the mindset that they wanted to expand the capabilities of that machine. They didn't want to just sell, right, a ZX Spectrum into the U.S. market just like they did with the 1000. That's my thinking as far as what I think Timex was thinking at that time. So even if it had passed, right, I don't think they would have went that route. I think they wanted to, get a cartridge port, because all the popular machines at that time were cartridge port capable, right? Commodore 64, TI-99-4A, the Atari machines, they all had cartridge ports. Yeah. And so you're going to bring a new machine out in 1983 that doesn't have a cartridge port, right? So I think it would have been
joystick ports.
Right. It would have been a sales detriment, right? Yeah. Especially in this market. Now in Europe or UK, not a problem, right? It was never a problem there. But you have these other machines you're competing against in the US market, right? That would have not shown the Spectrum in a good, or the TS2000 in a good light. I'm sure they would have sold some. As with anything, they would have sold some, and that might have been a better deal for Timex to keep going, because at least they would have some money generated, right, from a TS2000 product while they were working on the 2068, right? That would have been the next, right?
Right.
But you know, that goes back to SCLD design. So at some point, Timex decided, well, we're gonna work with NCR and do these standard cell logic designs, right? So here again comes into the 1500 comes into play. So obviously they're working on the 2068. They're learning how to do this SCLD design with NCR, right? They obviously know what's inside the spectrums for onto ULA, right? So they're converting that into the SCLD design. But now here you have this opportunity, right? Well, we kind of retooled the case for the spectrum, right? For the TS2000, right? It was going to be in a spectrum case, but they Timexized it. I guess there's a better word for that. You know, they put the fake vents on the top and they made it silver, blah, blah, blah. But basically it's a spectrum case. And said, well, why don't we use that case? And I think this is where the tipping point was, from moving to the 1000s case to the current case that the 1500s in, which is really a spectrum case. They already had the tooling, right? They already changed the molds. And they're like, well, here we have a case that's already done. We've already done the work on it. So it's not any more, capital investment to do that.
Well, let me pause you for a second,
Okay.
there, Carl. So the interesting thing there is Middlebury just, started out with the 1000 case, and Portugal came to Middlebury and said, let's use this spectrum case, and a soft keyboard.
Mhm.
So without the intervention of Portugal, we would have ended up with a 1500 that was just a silver 1000 and a crappy keyboard.
Well, that's really good that you bring that.
Yeah. And if this is not clear to anyone, because it's a kind of, let's say, a strange theory, this is recognized in a telex written by Lou Gailey, which was the head of development in USA, saying, so the guys came up with this idea and it looks interesting, blah, blah, blah. And then things started from there. So it's not like something that I remember or something like that, just to be very clear. The guy that suggested it, from what I then asked to the former executives here, was precisely the general manager, which was called Antonio Gomes, Tony Gomes sometimes, just for you to know.
Sure. Hello, this is Gustavo.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Gustavo.
I have a question from Portugal. Do you know if the intention of the Sinclair was sell the original CX spectrum in your country, direct from UK, or not? The original model.
Yeah. So we had a conversation about this in another meeting, Joao, and what we were talking about ultimately was, where did Timex have a license to sell the Timex versions, right? And when Amstrad bought Sinclair, it came out that Amstrad did not get a license to sell Sinclairs everywhere. There were places that Timex still had, sort of a carve out, and one of those was Poland. And so, Timex, in its effort to recover some of its money, went ahead and made this massive deal to sell, a ton of Timex computers to Poland. And so, as maybe what I was theorizing when Gustavo and I were talking about this was perhaps Portugal was one of those carve-out countries.
Exactly.
I'm not so sure. Yeah.
No, sorry. No, I think that the Argentina, Portugal, Poland, and I don't know, it's another country in another continent, maybe Sinclair decided does not sell directly the machines. But US, of course, because that's why in the case of US, Timex US create the Timex TS computer. And also here in Argentina, Cerveni create the Cerveni clone. And in the same way, for example, in Brazil with the micro digital also, I think that those countries that never receive machine spectrum directly from Sinclair.
Regarding Portugal, it's not. I know it's not true. what we are saying, so I can justify that we got Sinclair machines, and I'll tell right away why. Regarding the other countries, I know some things, but I don't know the answer to everything. So let me theorize a little bit about here. So starting with Portugal, Spectrums and the Sinclair machines, so ZX80, ZX81, more ZX81, and then ZX Spectrums, they started to be sold in Portugal before Timex Portugal was developing computers. So the first importer of computers in Portugal, of these computers, was a company called Landry. Landry saw a ZX Spectrum in Belgium, the owner of this company called Landry. By the way, Landry is laundry without the U, and it was a mistake. Basically, there's a story about that. The guy had other businesses. And so he went to Belgium. I think he saw a ZX80 or ZX81, and he decided to fly to London. And the guy had several contacts with the father of Clive Sinclair, who was basically taking care of international deals, so Bill Sinclair. And so he became the first importer and distributor of computers, of Sinclair computers in Portugal. So ZX81 was sold in Portugal before Timex Portugal was involved in this. Even more, when Timex Portugal became a real thing, when Timex Portugal became part of the Timex deal with Sinclair, there were problems. It seems there was this guy, Landry, he raised a court.
Yes, that
you
is,
went
that
to
is,
court?
that is
You
the
went to
history point that I mentioned, that what happened when Timex exists.
So when Timex started, the original importer had a problem, because Timex was able to sell computers at a price that he was not getting. So there was a problem here. So he was importing computers from the UK, and Timex in Portugal was developing them and start providing them to other distributors over here. So he was upset, and he went to court, and it's in London, and it seems that they agreed that Timex was going to sell the computers at the same price that he was importing them from the UK, and basically don't jeopardize the market to the guy. And two, it seems that Timex was going to pay royalties to him. He claims they never paid. They never paid any royalties. I only have the feedback from this guy. I don't have the feedback from Timex, so I normally don't go into much detail, because I don't know the other side of the story. But so there were problems, but there were Sinclair computers in Portugal before Timex Portugal was involved in this. Now, regarding other countries, regarding Argentina, regarding Poland and all of that, I think, I don't have any source to say this, but I imagine, and what I hear, and based on other things that I saw, Clive Sinclair didn't care much about markets like Poland or Portugal. Come on, we're a small country, so we have a computer that looks like. So we have a ZX Spectrum. It's a small batch they did, but you can find it here. That looks like the famous TS2000, or that is basically the same case as the CZ2000 from Argentina. So it's a black TS1500 ZX Spectrum, and no one knew why we did that. And the reason people explained to me, what they told me was this: eventually we had an issue with the mold, and we basically called Sinclair and said, we're going to do, so Christmas is coming, we need computers, we're going to do a batch using the TS1500 mold in black, and that's it. And basically no one cared about what happened in Portugal. Third part of the story, Argentina. I had the opportunity to interview Mr. Hugo Master, who was the only surviving founder of Cerbeni company in Argentina. And one thing he told me I was not familiar with is that he told me they approached Sinclair in the UK, and Sinclair could not sell to Argentina because of the war. And so they said to Timex in Portugal to produce the computers and sell to them. to me, this was a surprise because I thought this was a deal between Serbeni and Timex Portugal. It seems that perhaps it was not. It was between Serbeni and Sinclair, and then Sinclair used Timex Portugal to produce the computers and do it. Fourth part, Poland. Poland is very special. So I don't know if it is like David was saying about let's find I don't know
the money.
Yeah, but I was thinking about the expression about the swan, when he is last breath. I don't know the expression in English, but when you're dying and you do something before you die. So there's an expression using that kind of duck, the swan about it, but forget it. Okay. One thing very, sorry?
Swan song?
Swan song.
Yeah, that last attempt. At least we have an expression for that. Okay.
Also, last gasp.
Last gasp.
Okay.
There we go.
I don't know if I honestly don't know if it was like that. And if we think about the timeline, well, it's at the same time as Amstrad buys the.
Go ahead, Joel.
Oh, so it's at the same time that Amstrad buys Sinclair brand. It's true, but I do know one thing. It was very, very, very hard to sell anything to Eastern Europe back then because of the Berlin Wall, because of the Cold War, because of everything. There were guys sent to jail because of selling technology to the Eastern Europe back then. There's a story that was told to me about that involving computers, so not Timex, but friends of Timex guys. So what I mean was, it was, and I do have some documentation, David, you will have the opportunity to go through it, but we have documentation from Timex USA lawyers about finally getting the approval to export technology to Poland. And I think that was a major, let's say, success that the Portuguese guys got it. I don't know if in USA they were also trying or not. Well, it doesn't make sense back in those days. No. Because guys, remember this. Timex Portugal did not operate 100% independently. Timex Portugal reported to Timex Corporation in USA. So that's the reason why after 1984, we still have lots and lots of documents being exchanged between Portugal and USA.
I interrupt you for just a moment? Yes. I know that David and I, we have a couple, more than a couple, about 6 or 7 more things we wanted to cover, and we've got about 45 minutes left. The first thing we want to cover is something that I would like you to talk about. If you could give like maybe a summary for 1 minute to wrap up what you're talking about, and then maybe talk about like the update to the Timex 2068, not even the update, the new website that is the old website that's not been put up again.
Timex
then we also want to cover, if we can.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, if you allow me, I'll do that because then I also need to go. But so just to finalize this.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Thanks, Adam. So just to finalize this, Poland was strategic. Poland was a trading deal. They sold computers. Poland did not have dollars to pay for the computers, so they got monitors, Neptune monitors from Eastern Europe, Poland, and places around. And then in the deal, there was the involvement of a grocery store, a big chain, a Brazilian grocery store that was working in Portugal, that went to Poland in the deal of the computers and got vegetables and fruit and things like that. I know this sounds like an invention. No, but it's true. So, and it was as simple as this. The commercial director from Timex Portugal was flying next to the commercial director of this supermarket. They start talking and they explain what's happening, and they realize, okay, you guys go and get vegetables and fruits. I export the computers, they send monitors, and this way we don't need dollars to pay. We do a trading deal, and that's how they did it. So this was clearly strategic. And just to finalize this, Timex Portugal had a major problem because of the Sinclair brand being sold to Amstrad.
Right.
It basically jeopardized a 2 million euros deal nowadays with China. for something that you will hear a lot and a lot and a lot in the second semester of this year, if things go as expected, which is the I referred it before, the TENET, the Timex Educational Network that we are working on, because that was a final attempt to find a market and to export the technology, but the problem was Amstrad did not allow to have access to the ROM, and they didn't use the ROM that existed for the 2068 in USA and 2068 in Portugal also. So that was, yes.
Sorry, no.
Gustavo, let Joao finish, please.
No, quick response. Is the UK 2086, what happened? Was made in Portugal or was made in Poland?
It was made in Portugal. Then in Poland, they would change things in the computer. They changed the joystick ports. So I don't know if there was a single 2086 that was sold 100% like in Portugal. I doubt it, because they changed the label, they changed the name, they changed some joystick ports, they changed some plugs. So it was the black Timex Computer 2068, but locally adapted.
Oh, right.
So there was Polish engineering or intervention on it, okay? So it's not like, for example, the first Cerbeni computers in Argentina, that they were made in Portugal, and then Argentina start creating the models locally. All the Plus versions are locally made in Argentina.
And Joao, what about Timex Computer World?
Okay, Timex Computer World. So the best guy to talk about it is not here today. I don't know why he told me he was going to be, but so it's João Encarnato. So Timex Computer World was a website created 20 years ago, more or less, by João Encarnato, because he's a huge fan of Timex Portugal, and it compiled all the information we had. The website was outdated, used frames, Portuguese and English version, blah, blah, blah. And he challenged us, don't you want to update the website? And yeah, we want, we should. We need a place to talk about what we are doing with Timex, what we learn about Timex stuff. And so eventually, João is now one of the most active volunteers in the museum. So we gave the website and then he updated it. I just changed the infrastructure and helped with the content. So we did a huge effort of updating what we knew. So it's not like we have a list of things that are wrong there. But that doesn't mean everything is perfect. We may have mistakes there. There was a Portuguese guy telling me that we have a mistake because the TS2090, the joystick, the command stick, works on a ZX Spectrum, and that was a surprise to me. So we need to do some testing and update stuff. So we are open for correction. So if anyone discovers something that is not correct, let us know. But we did a huge effort to put everything we knew. Of course, we are not trying to do what David has on his website. David, for example, has much more information about Timex Computer Corporation than we have or we want to have. If there was no website from David, we could try to put it there. Nowadays, doesn't make sense. So I made a link to it. And if there's something there you guys think we should change, please let us know. We want to have the best possible information and accurate.
And there's like contact information on that page somehow.
There's a what? Contact?
Is there some kind of contact on the?
The page, the website is, let's say, a kind of a sub website from the main one. So there's a link saying museum load. If you press there, you have a contact form and things like that. So it should be easy to find the way to contact us. Bottom line, I think everyone should have my email. If you don't, I'll give it. It's easy.
Well, and Ryan put the link to the site in the chat.
Okay. Thanks. So we added everything we knew about Argentina, even the list of computers that were not made in Portugal, just to list them. We added everything. For example, we had mistakes in the old website about what was the Tenet and the 3256, the computer with 250 Ks of memory. That is basically a prototype. So we had mistakes on that. We corrected it. We added the information on Poland. We added information on the Jasmine FDD system, which is an FDD system that works with the Auric Atmos, which are some British computers from Tangerine Corporation. So we tried to put everything we knew. There are things missing. I'm discussing now with João. I don't know if any of you saw, probably not because it was in Portuguese. But so last June, we demonstrated something that Timex Portugal did, but it was not commercialized, which was a barcode reader. So they adapt a barcode reader existing to work with the Timex Computer 2068 using the joystick port. And we have the software, and we were able to put it working. And so we demonstrated it, and now we're going to put a page on the website talking about it.
Cool.
It's
I
kind
have
of
a question about that, actually.
Yeah.
So in the 1970s, I believe it was Creative Computing, they began this idea of having something similar, and they actually published programs in their magazine that were in that format. And instead of having to type it in, you would buy these barcode readers, and you would actually scan in.
Are you thinking of the Oscar reader, Adam?
I don't remember what it was called.
Because there was like two. Byte did something similar to that before the Oscar.
Okay.
And then the Oscar came out in the early 80s, and it was this real sort of blocky thing. And
I've never seen one,
for about 2 or 3 issues of, I think, Creative Computing.
Yeah,
and
that sounds about
other...
right. It did not catch on because you had to buy this piece of hardware.
Yeah.
No, let me just be. So I asked the guy that gave us the information in technology, because we got 2 or 3 barcode readers. Only one of them was assembled because they changed the plug and the wiring and all of that. And then we were able to get the software, which was decisive to put it working. And then there was a magazine in Portugal talking about it, but the information they published about it was not accurate to the version we had. So because when you look at a joystick port, I don't know if this is clear to you guys, but so you have that 9-pin port.
9-pin, yep.
Yeah, you can plug it on a TS or a TC2068. You can plug it on an FDD 3000, which is our floppy disk system over here from Timex. So there are many options, and they are different. So what I mean is, we were looking at the plug and thinking, where the hell are we going to plug this and put this working? And the fact is, João did a lot of effort. João Encarnado, Johnny Red, he was the one that was able to recover this. And he finally understood how it worked. And then I asked in the interview I did, but it's in Portuguese. So I asked the guy, why did you develop this? Were you going to sell it? Did you sell it or anything like that? They didn't sell it. He told me he didn't remember very well, but he thought they were using it. Their intention was to use it internally in the Timex unit, in the production line, to control the production, basically.
Interesting.
So that was their intention. At least that's what he remembers. The guy is Pedro Esteves. I mentioned him to David a couple of times.
Very, very cool. Wow. That's so. You're gonna have to give us a big update at one of the future meetings.
Yeah, we can.
We're gonna have to give you a block of time.
We can schedule that. If you guys let me just share some piece of news with you. So about the website, information is there. Something is wrong, let us know. If there's something you'd like to know and it's not there, let us know. The website has a part we call the digital archive. Digital archive is basically a folder on the website, on the main website, but then there's a subfolder for Timex content. So when you go to the Timex Computer World website and you press the archive thing, you can access documents, disks that we've been preserving and all of that. It should be there. So that
very nice.
it will be our way to communicate with the world about Timex things. Okay.
That's
Now,
awesome.
the thing I would like to share, because I'm very, let's say, excited about it.
I think I'm
sure.
going to have to take a minute to cut you off because we've got about 30 minutes left.
30 minutes.
I do enjoy what you've been talking about, but David and I wanted to sort of move on to a few things, and we're not going to have time today because we only have half an hour left. But I do thank you very much. You're an awesome person to talk about things. I just want you to go for the rest of the day, but we only have X amount of time.
No problem.
So,
no problem.
Yeah.
I'll just real quick. If I could, I'm a collector, so if you have a black version of the 1500 somewhere over there that I could get a hold of somehow, or black 2068 TC 2068. I have the silver one, but I know they made a black one, and I have a TC 2048, which is obviously black, but I don't have a black TC 2068. And now that you mentioned this black 1500 case, I would love to, maybe, because I certainly can't get it here.
Carl, could you please take this to a private email or something?
Well, yeah, I know. I just wanted
to
give him put a bird in his ear.
I appreciate that. So we're gonna, David. Do you want to talk about what we wanted to try to cover this time, but we're probably not going to have time?
It was such a long list. Yes. Yeah. All right. I'm gonna put up a picture, real quick, and Adam or Carl, explain what we're looking at.
Carl, please.
Well, I know.
Okay. Well, this is another thing from Bill Miller. So, shout out to Bill again. And these are 5 2050 modems boards. Obviously the two in the front there, or in the bottom, I guess, don't have the interface connector. Who knows what happened to them. And then of course the 3 in the back, seem to be fairly complete. They even have the phone cords.
And what's going to happen with these things?
Well, so I'm developing getting parts to make these not only work as a modem like they're supposed to, but convert them to an RS-232 port so that you can connect, whatever serial device that you want. So that's kind of, and then I bought relays that they're 4-pole double throw relays, but they are latching relays or shifting relays. So basically, the 5 volts that runs the modem comes from the computer.
Yep.
Right. So you're running those through the interface cable. Relays generally take, not a ton of current, but they take probably more current than they really need to for something that we're powering like this. So I didn't want to have a switch that was like on all the time, energizing a relay coil all the time. So I kind of got lucky on finding these latching relays. So basically you just momentarily, run power to the S coil, which sets it.
Yep.
And then you can release it and it just stays there, and then you can set coil current to the R coil for reset, and it shifts it to the other poles, right? So you don't need constant current on the relays to maintain that position. So that's kind of really cool in this case, because like I said, I don't want to draw a lot of current over that interface cable.
Yep.
And then
who's
I also
go online with these.
Adam is.
Is it anybody we know?
Carl brought along an Atari 800 on a disk drive, and we got his computer online for just a little bit, just to prove it. We could do it at 300 baud. And so the idea is to try that with the modem mode of the 2050 without it actually using the serial port once he gets one working, because it works over voice over IP.
Cool.
Of course, we're going to be
the other
using
thing
32 columns, so it'll be a little hard to read, but
right,
is what it is.
Because the other thing too is, David had a hand in this, because I knew that Adam got these boards, but it would be.
And thank you, Tim, for sending them along.
Yes.
And I got you some cases coming.
Yeah.
Did they land yet?
They come tomorrow, I think.
Tomorrow.
So
okay.
Basically we have some cases and actually 2 more modems, right? Because they got the boards in there too.
Yeah.
So, we're going to have 7 of these damn modems. 2 of them will be obviously spoken for.
Well, we should say that the 5 that were shown in the picture do not work. They do not work. Yeah.
Okay.
Do we know they don't work? But, I don't know.
Said so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And a few of them actually say so on the board themselves.
Oh, is that what those post-its are about? Not working? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to test them somehow. I can't test the phone part of it or the modem part of it, I guess. But I guess Adam's going to have to be the guinea pig for that, since he's got the setup to actually communicate with the BBS, right?
Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
So my part's just to come up with the board, put it in there, put a DB25 on there. And I bought LEDs too that go into where the front LED is on the front panel. This is data carrier detect or whatever, but it's a bicolor. So when you switch it to RS-232 mode, it'll light up green.
Cool.
So you'll know that you're in RS-232 mode. And when you switch it to modem mode, it won't even light up because it's going to mimic exactly what is already there. And the red light doesn't come on, I think, unless you've got some kind of data or
connection.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Cool. Thank you, Carl. Hey,
Mhm.
Tim, can you talk to us about something that you just finished putting out?
Oh, the ZXZine.
Thank you very much. That's the thing.
What's there to say other than you've seen it? Hopefully people have seen it. I think I spent a number of months working on that, and I finally got enough material to put together. So I'm start working on stuff for the next one. So what do you want me to say about it, other than it's out and it's available? Questions
That's good.
on
I
it?
mean,
Or...
yeah. Maybe you can say what's in it.
Yeah. And where we can get it.
Top of my head, I can't remember exactly all I put in it because I'm already starting working on the next one. But I would like to talk about the next one, meaning like the next one should be a hard copy. So I'd like to see what things, people have ideas what they want to do. It'd be a good idea to have a review of the TS Pico. Also, so one question on that is the TS Pico, will it work on a Spectrum?
No.
Well, if you had a twister board, would it work?
No.
Okay, the reason I'm asking is that a number of people that read the ZXZine are in the UK. If we start talking about the TS Pico, they might be interested, and so just kind of mentioning that. But if people
wait a minute. So the UK people want something from the Timex Sinclair 2068. Wow, that's just
well. And so I think is right now. I don't know if there's there is the ZX Span, which I think is for the ZX81. I know there's something similar, I think, for the Spectrum. But every time I see stuff on the Spectrum, it's like, oh, buy it now before they sell out. Everything that comes like this sells out rather quickly. The same with the Spectrum Next and the next, and so on.
Yeah.
So I could just see people with Speckies going, hey, this is kind of neat. I wonder if it works for my hardware, if there's no other options in the UK or in Europe. So that's what I was just asking.
The short answer is not today. The longer answer is maybe in the future. And it is something that Gustavo and Ricardo have talked about a lot. And I keep telling them, yes, but the Spectrum people have the div MMC. And, I could be wrong. I'm happy to be wrong.
I don't know either. I don't really follow that, especially on the hardware side, but I'm just thinking that maybe somebody might want to say, well, gee, I can't get that. This may no longer be available. Let me try this other thing. So
yes, Tim, and another market maybe is the Timex computer machine, and also the Timex computer 2048 is the same case as the Spectrum, because those computers has a Spectrum bus in the back.
Right.
We need to convert the connections to put the interface directly, and also we need to support the interface one paging method. If we support that on hardware, that could be possible.
Yeah. But so Tim, you're saying about ZXZine number 11.
Yeah, so I'm just looking. I've got a couple of ideas I want to do myself, but I think we should have other people do it. I think the last issue was like 11 pages. It'd be nice to do the next one to be longer.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to figure out what people want in it. What's the cost going to be? Go ahead, Adam.
Oh, sorry about that. I did submit something already. I don't know if I started a thread called number 11, and I submitted a news article. I thought it might as well start a new thread about it. And I submitted an article, short article, news tidbit, a few paragraphs with some links about the new scan of the winter 1983 Timex catalog, which I thought was worth being in there.
Cool.
Yeah, it's on the list somewhere.
And something else, Tim, would these projects, quote unquote, that I'm working on, would that be something that might be of interest to those guys over there? I mean, they're kind of hardware projects, but Right.
So the thing is, you are documenting it quite well in the mailing list, but not everyone gets the mailing list. So it'll
Right.
be, because the next version is probably going to be electric and paper. Because I don't think we'll send paper over the UK, but we could. So it's no matter of how thick, how much do we want to do, how many pages do we want to do. So I'm looking to see what people are interested in reading about, who's interested in writing. If there's a number of people who I want to read about this, maybe someone's willing to step up and write an article on that. Or so I'm looking for both. Someone says, hey, I want to see articles on more, like David wants to maybe write an article on Pascal, or someone wants to hear an article on Pascal and David could write it. So that sort of stuff, what do we want in it? And then there's also the side discussion of how much is it going to cost? Do we use the funds that we've raised through the Bill Miller collection to help offset the cost? Where do we get it where do we get it printed? I have a local printer if I need to do it here. I know, David, you did the manual for the TS Pico. Did you have a local printer there? Did you go printing online? Do we do a print on demand where we just basically load it up on Lulu or Amazon and someone can then buy a copy, and then we don't have to worry about the costs at all because it's all done, by print on demand, that by the end user, by the buyer. So so many different options we can do. Do we want to run maybe 50 copies and send those out? And then do we need to do more, or do both? 50 copies and then finish, then later do print on demand for any additional. So
yeah, cool. So to your point, Tim, Adam, it sounds like Adam has started a thread in the groups.io. And
although I can't find it, I sent it on Wednesday, and
oh, maybe you've been shadow banned, like Carl was.
Yeah, what is the deal with that? How does that work? But
I don't know. We'll reach out to David Ellis and ask him to look into it. So anyway, like I said, we'll start a thread, or we'll get Adam's thread unblocked, and hopefully we can use that to sort of coordinate with you, Tim, on getting articles together and stuff. I mean, Carl, I think that the work you're doing on that 1000/1500, especially with the photos, I think that's something that a lot of folks would find interesting and is worth preserving in print, to me.
Yep, I think so too.
And then, taking an old modem and bringing it up to date and making it so that you can use it, in this modern world with VoIP. That's kind of a cool thing too.
So this would be the Carl edition of the new Easy.
Well, no, because so speaking of which, right? I've got a couple irons in the fire. One of which is this book called ZX Spectrum Assembly, Let's Make a Game. It's originally in Spanish. This is a print on demand. I think I got it from Amazon. And I've read a bunch of how to program assembly on the Spectrum books, and this one actually makes sense to me. This is really, really good. I mean, and I've seen a lot of books, right? So I'm going to do a review of that.
Well, that thing looks thick as. I mean, holy crap.
Great. It's I listen, if I'm raving about
400 pages or something.
Yeah, actually 459.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's written by a couple guys, I think, in Spain. Really, really good. I don't know who did the translation, but the translation is really good because it was originally, like I said, in Spanish. So that's one of the things. I've got a couple other projects that I'd like to, write up and submit for your consideration, Tim. And I encourage everyone else who has done anything in life involving a Timex computer to consider writing about it for ZXZine, because I'm all about the preservation of your knowledge and experiences, and I think that is an excellent venue for it. And if the UK folks can have a crash annual, which I think turned into even more frequently, then we can have something just as nice.
Remember, any software it's just a zip file. So I mean, David Sully was like, well, what about listings? I'm not really going to put listings much inside the zine, because there's no need to. We can already typed in, we just do a zip file. there may be some code if you want to give an example, like, hey, here's a, a 10 or 20 lines kind of thing. But if you've got a program that's 1,000 lines, wouldn't you just type in? We just save it as a .p file or a .b,
Or
text
use the
file.
barcode reader.
Yeah, right. Because of barcode reader. Yep.
Well, it's I might still have a QCat running around. I don't know if that'll work.
Yes, it
Yeah,
will.
the old Radio Shack catalog thing.
Yeah.
Thank-
So I'm always looking for ideas. I don't think we have much of. I mean, if you write something, odds are it'll probably go in. I think also, but this time I may include David to basically be my backup when it comes to reviewing it, make sure we're not misspelling things and that sort of stuff. So
Cool.
occasionally, spellings come into it, but hey, it's not a professional thing. So
And I know I just kind of want to give a shout out to Ryan because he created a I don't know who came up with the idea that, hey, we need to track this outside of the group's IO,
Yes.
all our projects.
Yes.
And so, we kind of started it for the KPRO thing that we've got going on, but that's not really relevant here. But there's also these other, the 1,000 to 1,500 project. So he's kind of made some space in there and has been consolidating my posts right into one document. So basically they're the posts, but they're just in they're in a document that we could, send to you. That way they're not a bunch of threads on a post, right? They're actually in a document. It's the same content, but not, I'm not writing different stuff.
And where's
Anyway.
that going to go, Carl? Is that on Ryan's website?
It's a Google Docs thing right now.
Okay.
So only certain people have access to it, but it's just, because I don't think we need to give everybody access to that. But I mean, once we get done with it, right, I don't see why we couldn't send.
Probably what we could do is, I mean, it's really just kind of more or less just copy pasting your posts together with some dates and things like that. But we could probably, and it's going to be pretty long, so it probably at some point be good to make it like almost kind of like a summary,
edit it down,
version of it.
Yeah.
One
Yeah,
was just
then link.
capture everything first, and then we can shorten it.
Make a whole
Ryan?
separate document out of it, and we just do a review of the document inside ZXZine. So
Yeah.
also, is someone looking into doing the wiki part of Groups IO as a way of storing information for our projects?
I know we talked about it, but I don't think anybody picked that up.
Well, I think you tried doing something there, Dave, right? You didn't have access, so that's another David thing.
Yeah, we got to reach out to David about that. Not me, David.
Right.
Thank you, Tim. Ryan, would it be possible for you to show us your Spectrum terminal, or should I just show a screen capture?
Oh, yes. Let me
Okay. And while you're digging,
let me see if I can get that shared.
I took back in '84 when Timex decided that we were not important people anymore, they made this thing called the technical manual available, and it was, I don't know, 300-ish pages of tech details about the Timex 2068. Oh, looks like Ryan's ready for us. I'll come back to it. So Ryan, this is your Raspberry Pi computer running Fuse.
We got Fuse here running in Spectrum mode.
Spectrum mode, okay.
So that I can use the interface 1.
Got it.
Emulation, which has RS-232 support. So just, geek warning here. This is pretty nerdy, and it's not really that exciting, really. But the way they implemented this is that you can plug the receive and transmit lines of the RS-232 into something, and the only something I could find was a post by the guy who wrote this part saying, "Oh, you could connect it up to some Unix FIFO queues." So I had to look into that, and actually, let me.
Ryan, why don't you show us what it does, and then maybe give us some background?
I think he's trying to hook up the. I can tell these FIFO command buffers means he's trying to actually make it go.
So I thought, well, what could I connect up to this, to actually do anything with? So what I did was I made these FIFO queues in Unix, which you can. There's a make FIFO command that basically makes these special files that are just like like in any sort of file abstraction in Unix and DOS, that kind of thing. They were a little different.
Everybody knows.
So like a device can look like a file because it's just going to produce. You can read and write to it, and whether it's a file or a device. So that's kind of like a serial port, right?
Yeah.
So you can make these files. You can do this other ways, I think, but this just makes this a little easier because these stick around. So I basically went and connected up these receive, transmit. You go and you pick a file, but basically I connected them up to these two that I made, so they're connected up. And so then I was like, well, how do I actually connect that to anything else? And so it's really complicated, and I won't explain it all here, but use this handy dandy connector tool in Unix called SOCAT, which is socket cat.
Yeah, oh my God.
So
you're taking me back there, Ryan.
And it's an evolution of netcat. But anyway, I'm running the terminal login program.
Yep.
I'm telling it, run that as a process and capture its input-output, standard input-output, and connect it to that instead of a serial port. It's connected to the SOCAT process, which then shuttles its input-output to those two pipe, or to you can think of them as pipe files, I guess you could say, to those two FIFO queues, one for transmit, one for input and output from this program that it's running and controlling. So
I just want to point out that this is extremely high Unix wizardry nerdiness.
No doubt.
I'm telling it, sit there and wait.
That's what. So Ryan and I talked about this for an hour on the phone the other day.
And did after the hour was done, did you understand any better what was going on?
Actually, I did.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So so there it's waiting. It's waiting on those named pipes. Is the other name for those things.
Yeah, I was going to say the only thing I really know from that command is the sudo.
Yeah. Okay.
I have to use sudo a lot in Linux, yeah, or Unix.
So then I've loaded up that Plato terminal software. So here we go, and it'll trigger that login port. And so there's my login to my Raspberry Pi 400 there. So we will just log in as me.
Okay, everybody pay attention. He's typing his password.
Mm-hmm. Damn it, it's obscured.
Oh.
Even Ryan can't hack into his own system.
No. Gotta go slow. There we go.
Oh my God.
No, it's not. The terminal settings are all wrong, but
yeah, you've got the width off.
So I haven't figured out how to do that. So we're going to list the home folder there.
That's funny that it does the border. Like it's floating
a
tape.
Yeah, apparently the I/O through the serial port flashes the border in a similar fashion.
Huh. So basically, Linux does new line, whereas it looks like the Spectrum was respecting a new line and carriage return.
Carriage return, you think so?
Yeah, I've been trying to fiddle. No, I know that. I've been trying to fiddle with the settings, and problem is this terminal software. I can't get any option menu to pop up at all. But it's the only one that seemed to work at all so far. So I'll sort all that out later on.
Cool.
Ryan, is it possible to connect this through SLIP?
Oh.
To the web?
Yeah, so basically, let's see.
Do you know what terminal the software emulates?
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah,
You can always
it's not-
run something like Lynx and run basically, a web browser via terminal on the Spectrum.
Well,
There we go.
this Plato term thing is pretty old. It's
But other
I
ones I
remember using Plato
tried.
term when I was a kid.
The
Actually, this
problem
is a new
is,
program.
It was
Plato term
the
is new.
problem is it's the
Or
only
semi-new.
one that was labeled that said it worked with interface one. Everything else doesn't say anything.
Okay.
Mm.
So it either didn't work with interface one serial port, or it just didn't work.
Luckily,
So-
with Linux, a lot of old stuff still works. Like VT52 emulation should still be available.
Yeah, but I think Ryan's point is the terminal program that runs on the Spectrum.
Spectrum may
Yeah.
or may not.
Right, may or may not.
Yeah, we don't have to figure out what emulator what it does.
Yeah, and this Plato term comes from the same folks working on the Fuji net, whatever it's called,
You
and
can,
implements
you-
that old Plato.
if you have
protocol.
Right.
the interface one running on back, you can set the basic command open and then print and also send the string to the serial port.
Okay.
I test that for my interface one running on the Timex computer. I open the channel and then send quit print and also the channel, the string. You don't need the terminal to exchange bytes or text.
It'll be
Well, here it
interesting.
is. Here it is connected up to where'd it go?
To what's it, Retro BBS? I know which one you're talking about. It
There it is.
already went off screen.
The FozText
FozText.
BBS, which is something I found and it happened to work.
So
So I'm
Good.
using
So
SOCAT. I'm using SOCAT to connect the other end now instead of a local terminal to a TCP port on the internet to connect to this internet BBS.
we have 5 minutes left, roughly. Our next meeting is Monday, February 5th at 9 in the evening. Thank you, Ryan. This is awesome to see.
Yeah, now you know what he's going to use his 2050. I don't think he's going to really
His
use the
2050
modem
modem?
part of it. Right. He's not going to use the modem port, but I'm sure he's going to use the RS-232 part.
Awesome. Nice. And just to finish up what I was saying, I scanned that original tech manual, did a little cleaning up of it, the 2068 technical manual, and it's now available. If you're a person that wants to have, a physical copy, it's available for print on demand. And I think I sent the link to the groups.io, but I'll send it out again.
David,
Yeah.
sorry, just a comment for the U manual,
Yes.
the original manual. Could you please scan in full space, single page, the schematic? Because are you split in
Well,
2 or 3 pages?
Actually, let me tell you something about that. Somebody sent me some material, and in it was blueprints of the 2068 schematic. I think the 1500 schematic. There's like four blueprints, and
David,
they
could you
are
stop,
not
sharing that page, because that's all I can see.
Yeah, let me
Or-
kill off Ryan's screen here.
Thank you.
So these are, if you've ever seen a physical copy of the schematic that Gustavo was referring to, it's about 11 by 17. These are actual physical blueprints, and literally they are blue and they are giant.
Mhm.
And I have a very large flatbed scanner. They're actually too big for that, so I'm going to have to scan them in quadrants and reassemble it.
Well,
But
Dave, before you go and do that, those blueprints that I got from Timothy,
Yes.
Staples
Yes.
has a large format scanner. That's how they scan those blueprints in. They just scanned them in
Well,
one shot.
the
Let-
nearest
let-
Staples to me is 90 miles away.
Wow. Okay. Well, maybe there's something like an Office Max or maybe
Yeah, we have
someplace
FedEx
else
and
that-
stuff like
yeah.
that. Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
I may do that if I'm not successful.
Let me
But
present a suggestion.
my
you
goal,
scan the original-
Gustavo, can I finish?
Yes. Yes. No,
My goal
sorry.
here is to scan these things and make them available to to y'all at full 300 DPI resolution, and then if find some place that will print them
Yes.
on demand for you as posters.
Yes, but the recommendation is the following. The schematic has an error. You need to scan and then modify some cross lines because it's not accurate.
That's fine, but I'm going to scan and leave it as it is. And if somebody wants to correct it and mark it up as corrected, that's cool.
I think that's a good idea.
I'm preserving. I'm not going to fix those things. Just like I didn't fix any issues in the technical manual. This is a reproduction of the thing that you could have gotten from Timex in '84.
Well, who actually has one? I know I have an original technical manual from '84. So I mean, I have the original one. Anybody else has one? I mean, yeah, there you go. Figure some of you guys do.
Yeah, and they're kind of hard to come by. So it's got a similar blue cover, a similar typeface on the front, and then the inside
How about the source code? Because that was kind of horrendous in the original copy.
It is equally horrendous.
Okay.
However, a bunch of that source code is in the green bar that Lon Hildreth shared with me and is now available on archive.org. And that was scanned full size green bar. That was an adventure.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Okay. Just a reminder, Friday. Not Friday.
David, there
Monday.
was one other thing you need to
February,
talk about, actually.
February 25th. What else do I need to talk about?
We were just going to say, are we going to try to have a speaker, or are we going to have someone else speak?
I have not got anybody lined up. No, I don't. I don't have anybody lined up.
Okay.
I'm going to start reaching out to folks this week, but it's going to take some time to get people lined up.
So is there someone here who wants to do a talk for half an hour or so-ish about their topic? Or
I can talk for about an hour and a half. No,
this is true.
Well, we can talk about it on the board. It's just
yeah,
it'd be nice to have someone once per meeting if we don't have a guest speaker.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that makes sense, Adam. That makes a lot of sense. We'll like you said, we'll talk about it on groups.io and nominate somebody. All right. Well, we're out of time. It's 4 o'clock. It's time for you to go do something else.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
See you guys later.